All right, good, beautiful day, beautiful people of the earth. Thank you for coming back here and joining us on this channel once again. So either yesterday, today, or tomorrow, tens of millions of people in this country are going to go to the voting booth and they're going to do their civic duty and they're going to vote. I still have my vote right here. That's what I think about the whole process. Many of these people are going to go and vote, and they're never going to think about the fact that when this country was originally established, nobody voted on the president or the vice president of this country. Okay, in fact, when this country was originally established, something they're not really going to think about and probably haven't thought about before is that the citizens of a state didn't even elect their senators, their state senators. That was for the General Assembly and the governor of the state to do. But most of these people will have thought about the fact that when this country was first established, black men and women of all colors couldn't vote, because that's what we focus on. That's what we teach our children. That's what we teach our future generations, our future society. Now, this country was established, and the way that our government's supposed to function is really beautiful, because people have been governing other people for tens of thousands, if not millions of years. You know, just the written record doesn't go back that far. And so they have a pretty good idea on how to do this. We already know how good governments work and how bad governments don't work, kind of. But the thing is why do people put up with bad government? And the biggest reason probably is a lack of other options. So there was this gentleman, his name was John Locke, and he wrote the Second Treatise of Government, which is what our founding fathers used to develop the United States of America as they saw it. And basically in this, he talks about dissolving your civil form of government. And when you dissolve your civil form of government, it's okay for the government to dissolve. Like, everything will be okay if the government dissolves. But if society dissolves, it will not be okay. And if society dissolves, the government is going to dissolve with it, because the government won't have a society to govern. It's pretty simple logic. And you see this whenever you see communism come into place, whenever you see socialism come into place in a government as a governing body, is typically the society dissolves and collapses. And in the wake of that, in the void of power of that dissolution and collapse, communism and socialism come in and take power and control. That's what happened in Russia. That's what happened in some ways in Nazi Germany. So, but, you know, even though the society kind of collapsed, it got pulled back together incredibly quickly with an authoritarian arm. So, what did these founding fathers know? And John Locke, you know, who wrote the Second Treatise of Government probably 100 years before this country was ever founded. What did they know that we don't really know today? And one of the first things they knew was that if your government's not working for you, government's just something that people make up. It's an idea that's just created in the mind. So create a new idea. It's called competition, right? Like, we're all about the free market. We're all about competitive markets. Well, why isn't there a competitive market for government? Because when the government becomes tyrannical, this is exactly what John Locke talked about. Was you gotta give them competition. You gotta create something on your own. And this is what the founding fathers did with the Continental Congress. When they told Britain, hey, we don't accept your government because we don't have any confidence that you guys are going to govern us according to the best way we should be governed. We have way more confidence that we can govern ourselves better than you guys would govern us. And that's basically what happened in the Revolutionary War. And why can't we do that again today? You know, like, were they so much better than us back then? I mean, today we have more technology, we have open information. We have more easily, readily available information at our disposal and at our fingertips. So why can't we do it? And why haven't we done it? What if I told you that your officials were selected and not elected? A lot of people would sit there and go, no, that's just that crazy conspiracy theory talk. No, we definitely elect our officials. What if I told you that our government was about as democratic as China or Hong Kong under China rule? Well, what if I said that? Still crazy? Still insane? Not according to this guy from a TED Talk. Well, let's see what he has to say.
And the protest was about a law. And the law was proposed by China. The law was to determine how the governor of Hong Kong would be selected. And the law said the ultimate aim was the selection of the chief executive by universal suffrage upon nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee in accordance with democratic procedures. Okay, so the idea was there's a two-step process. The first step was nomination, and then the second step was an election. And the nominating committee would be comprised of about 1,200 people, which means out of 7 million people, that is 0.02% of Hong Kong. The claim was that the 0.02% would be dominated by a pro-Beijing business and political elite, so 99.98% would be excluded from this critical first step, with the consequence, obviously, of producing a democracy responsive to China only. Used to say, I don't care who does the electing, as long as I get to do the nominating, where any stupid animal could learn which buttons it needed to push for its sustenance. This is a picture of the life of the modern American congressperson. As the modern American congressperson, 2014, it turns out 57,874 Americans maxed out in that way. So we could say 57,874 gave enough to matter, to control, to be the dominant force in this first stage of the election process. And then some of you out there, the math geniuses out there, beginning to do the numbers, you're thinking 57,874? Wait a minute. That's 0.02% of America. 0.02% of America dominate this first stage in the process of electing the candidates who will represent us. They pick the candidates, because you can't be credible unless you get their money, and we get to vote for those candidates. This tiny fraction of the 1%, this Chinese fraction of the 1%, dominate this first stage, with the consequence, obviously, of producing a democracy responsive to these funders only.
Pretty interesting. It looks to me like you can elect Coke or Pepsi. You can elect red or blue. You can elect right or left. But after that, it's all selected. They're all selected. Most people have never thought about this. Just like most people haven't thought about the root of the word suffrage is the word suffer. And that's your right to vote. Suffer. The act of. AGE. And what do we get for this government that we vote for? Right? Like, what do we get in return? We get a bunch of administration. I mean, everybody has heard of, at the very least, the administrative state. Harvard law professors have written books about the administrative state. And what is this administrative state? It's basically a form of government under the executive branch where they don't have to go to court. They have their own administrative process rather than going to court. So there are a lot of people here in America, especially in the past, who over the past 100 years have tried to make the world a better place through various different ways and concepts. I'm just going to focus on two right now. So one would be free energy. Let's hear what this man, Eric Dollard, has to say that the government did to his workshops when he started trying to produce free energy devices.
Well, all I can do is speak from experience, okay? Everything I've built has been destroyed. Right.
Let me finish. Okay, I'm just going to speak from my experience, okay? Everything I built has been destroyed. Took a while to figure out why all this worked. But that's it. That's all gone. There's no see or belief or anything. An environmental organization came in, seized the whole situation, hired high school vandals to smash all the equipment with hammers and axes, spread the mercury and the PCBs all over the floor, the environmental saviors, smashed everything, cut all the cables, dumpstered all the notebooks, tried to make sure I had no place to live in town.
Yeah, but they were hired by...
No, they own the place now. They just simply took it over. Commonweal already smashed the rest of it at RCA. The Park Service got my warehouse at Fort Mason Pier 3. So everything went to the dump. And it was time to eat out of garbage cans again for another couple of years.
And it sounds like they came in with some type of administrative order. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, it's an administrative agency. They didn't have to go to court. It didn't sound like he knew that there was some type of judgment against him. It just sounds like this administrative agency came in and busted up all this stuff just because, well, he was trying to make something with free energy and he could have been close to succeeding. And maybe he's a crackpot, but some of y'all might have remembered this from Ohio back in the mid-'80s. I don't know. I'm still kind of young. But let's watch it.
In the top, our news here at 6 o'clock, an age-old dream becoming a reality. A local inventor has discovered a way, hear this, to use water to run your car.
It's a major breakthrough that will no doubt make motorists happy. And as Ralph Robinson explains, the Pentagon is also showing lots of interest in this project.
Water has always been considered a precious commodity, but Stan Meyer's invention may make it even more valuable. He has developed what's called a water fuel cell. It has taken the place of his old gas tank. The water fuel cell breaks down water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen. The hydrogen is used to run his dune buggy.
I don't care if you use rainwater, well water, city water, ocean water. If you don't have any fresh water, go ahead and use snow. If you don't have any snow available to you, then use salt water because there's no adverse effect to the fuel cell.
Meyer started working on this project 4 years ago. He's not a scientist. He isn't even a chemist. In fact, he never graduated from college. Myers was determined, he says, to design something to protect this country from oil embargoes.
And we have calculated that if we take the dune buggy from Los Angeles to New York, we would roughly use 22 gallons of water.
The Pentagon flew a lieutenant colonel in last week to look at Meyer's invention. There's talk of possibly using it in the Star Wars defense program and to run Army tanks. Myers is currently perfecting a water fuel cell for cars. It will cost about $1,500. He says it won't need any maintenance, and you won't have to replace it. It'll be at least 2 years before the fuel system goes into mass production. The day it happens will be one the fuel industry hates, but it'll put a smile on the face of those who've had to say at one time or another, pull her up.
Another gentleman talking about running cars off of water. And I remember people talking about this for a long time. So why haven't we gotten there yet? Why haven't we gotten there? I mean, if this guy made a car that was running off of water back in the 1980s, why here in 2020 are we still using so much gasoline? I'll tell you why. Because scarcity makes more money. The more scarce a resource is, the more you can charge for it. It's simple laws of economics. Incredibly simple. And so it's not just energy and the environment that the administrative state and the administrative agencies have kind of interfered with, but it's also things like the Gerson miracle, holistic medicines. Now they tell you that you can't even decide what type of medical practice you wish to have performed on yourself. They only give you one option. You have to go with the standard medical treatment of today or nothing. They're not going to cover anything else. Whereas there have been a lot of people in the past who have talked about things like natural remedies, holistic remedies, things that don't involve a doctor, a massive prescriptions, a whole lot of radiational therapy, pharmaceutical drugs, chemical enhancement. And what happens to those people? Well, the FDA. The FDA comes in and says, well, we're the Federal Food and Drug Administration. So we can come in, if we don't agree with what you're doing to your own body, or what you're allowing other people or helping other people to do with their own body, then we're going to come in and we're going to take all of your equipment, all of your science, all of your data. We're not going to allow you to spread these ideas. And we're going to do this for your good. We're going to protect you from yourself. Because that's what it's all about, right? That's what administrating other people is all about. It's all about protecting them from themselves as if they were children. Because people don't know how to learn and grow and, do things on their own. They don't know how to learn from their own mistakes, I guess. Now, another thing the voters probably have thought about. They've probably thought about this before they've gone and voted. And I remember in the 2016 election, this was a really, really big topic. And that was they weren't really voting for their candidate. They were voting against the other candidate. So a lot of people, they're not really voting for the individual that they believe is going to best represent their interests. They're voting against what the other candidate might cause. For instance, if somebody is really big on gun control, they're not voting for who's going to give them the most gun rights, because no politician is talking about giving anybody any more gun rights. Nobody's talking about that. What they're going to vote against is who's going to take away my guns. I'm not going to allow that guy into office. Or if somebody is pro-abortion, they're not going to vote deciding like, well, who's going to uphold these rights the most. They're going to vote against the right who they believe is going to take away Roe versus Wade. They're going to vote against having conservative judges on the Supreme Court because they look at that as going against their interest. But honestly, when you're voting against people and not for people, they're really not representing your interests. And just kind of like what we saw with what was going on in China and the United States, these people don't represent our interests. They represent the interest of banks and corporations and Wall Street. That's why those organizations can collapse and we'll just go back and bail them out. Doesn't matter. We don't care. It's not our money anyways, it's the taxpayers. With these things kind of in mind, I'd like to add my own contribution. And I can't show anybody how to make free energy, and I can't show people how to cure cancer. It's not what I've studied. What I have studied is how government's supposed to operate and how it's supposed to function. And I will give this information for free. Hopefully somebody might utilize it at some point in time. And one of the first things to know about how this government was set up to function is that it was set up to function in a way where it governed corporations. It didn't govern you and me. It did not govern individuals. And if you go and look in the Constitution, it's Article 1, Section 8, and that tells Congress what they have the power and authority to do. And nowhere in there does it say you have the power and the authority to govern people. Everything that it's dealing with is either dealing with a function of the government or a function of commerce and company. It's not dealing with the people at large. So that's kind of the first idea. Anyways, I'll start going through ideas individually here and there. And I appreciate you watching. And if you're still interested in what we can do, well, if we don't stand up for other people's rights, then we can go ahead and count on the idea that people aren't going to stand up for our rights when we wish for them to. So if you like this, and you like these videos, you like this stuff, please go and support Henry Ramo. We're trying to raise funds for this man so that he can get back a home he's already worked for. And money and properties that were stolen from him. So if you just check out the story, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, and have a nice day.